Well, I'm not entirely sure where to start with that. This is Hearts standard. This is Hearts standard. I'm Craig Cairns and that's Joel Sked. We've just watched, I'm not sure what we've just watched Hearts 3, Motherwell 3. We were getting ready to record a very different video at one point. Hearts were terrible, in attacking sense and a defensive sense for about the first 60, 65 minutes, and then an incredible comeback in some ways. But I suppose the big story would be that, okay, they finished on a positive, they can take momentum, we can look at all the narrative of 2 league games in a row, they've come from behind to take something, but it can't get that bad very often.
No, there's parts in that first half, or just the first hour, I was just sitting there thinking, wow, Motherwell are really, really good. They're really enjoyable to watch. And then it clicks, hold on, they're playing against Hearts. Hearts have been awful and really, really bad. And I know there's certainly been a lot of just had a wee gander on social media, and understandably some fans going, that's the worst performance that they can remember at Tynecastle. And it was just how it wasn't like Hearts got battered. It was the ease of which Motherwell played through, and just the composure and confidence and cohesion that Motherwell showed was a direct correlation to Hearts, where was it the third goal we were going to talk about, where Hearts went to press and it was just like 2 passes and then Motherwell are in the middle of the Hearts box, and it just like everyone just seemed, whether it was the back 4 originally or when they changed it to back 3, everyone just seemed to not know what to do. And Derek McInnes did speak about Motherwell and their ability to ask you different questions. They've
got solutions. Like if you do one thing, they'll have a solution.
They'll change it back. Yeah. So,
I think who was the player that was put up for Motherwell? He said the same
Elliot
thing.
Watt, yeah. And I was like, Elliot Watt was talking about Cammy Devon. While the game was on, I was thinking, it's like, this is the best I've ever seen of Motherwell. So it was a really difficult afternoon that could have been, and you just seen it in the crowd. It was like the crowd turned early on in the first half just because of how desperate Hearts were. But then you seen the flip side of what the Tynecastle crowd can be like. That Harry Milne scores, everyone's thinking, okay, there might be a chance here. Braga scores that second, and the whole crowd are up, and it just transforms the momentum aspect of it as well. It was just a completely different game.
The noise of those second and third goals were incredible. I think it was an extra noise because it was Braga. I think there's lots of people want Braga to do well, but the noise was incredible with those 2 goals. Let's talk about the team selection. You wrote that, I suppose related to it, you were writing about half-time changes, and this is the third game in a row where McInnes has made changes at half-time.
So he's made double sub at Dundee United, went from a back 3 to a back 4. With Kent and Forrest coming off. Then it was a triple sub last week, and while it stayed a back 3, there was just like the attacking trio, the way that they lined up was a slight tweak. And then today, double sub went from a 4-4-2 to a 3-5-2. I think, 3-5-2. And it goes back to something McInnes said a bit of himself. Need to start picking the right 11. And while the good thing is he's got a lot of choice he can turn to on the bench and go, he's got solutions on the bench. That's a real positive. But it's not just these last couple of games that he's maybe not picked the right start 11. He's kind of mentioned it a couple of times in League Cup games as well. So that's something where I think to be just with the new players in, it'd be good to maybe just not overthink it, just that's not the right phrase, just simplify it and just go, right, this is how we, because he talked about coming in, it's like, this is how we play. And I always thought that when he talked about that, it wasn't formation wise, it was philosophy wise. He was going to change formation, but the style would try and stay the same. But I do think maybe a settled formation, especially with players coming in, he's still getting to learn about these players. But if he can kind of just a couple of weeks settle down, the only issue is, and people have talked about, asked whether he knows his best 11, is someone messaged me on Twitter and just asked about talking about this thing where all fans know what the best 11 is. I don't think that's the case. We talked about, I think you talked about it with Scott on Friday, and it was, if you asked 1,000 Hearts supporters, the best 11, I think you'd get a lot of different responses.
Yeah, exactly. And related to that, does that mean that Derek McInnes... Now, okay, McInnes has got a really much more difficult task in his hands to come out and face the media there if that game finishes 3-0. But
Yes.
it's a wee bit easier for him to come out after they've rescued a point and shown a lot of character. But putting all that to the side, does Derek McInnes not deserve some sort of time to play about with his team? Now, I know that he's still got to get results to an extent, and you can't be going 3-0 down to Motherwell. That's still inexcusable. He's not going to come out and say in any circumstances that excusable. But does he deserve, if not things that are quite as bad as that, does he deserve moments where he can muck about with the team and find that he's got a lot of players that he needs to try and sift through to find out who is his strongest 11, and he's not going to find out his strongest 11 without trying different combinations?
Yeah, because people maybe ask, you can do that in training, and you get an idea of what in training. Training is completely different to actually getting them on the pitch and against a team like Motherwell. So yeah,
and then you see how they react when the crowd's all booing at 3-0 down.
So I do think that there will be teething problems about trying to find the right combinations. It's a difficult one, because I think you and Murray mentioned on Scarcer in the Funnel, is that you want a kind of settled 11 so guys build up relationships.
Yeah.
I think that's important, but also trying to find the right blend and balance with new guys coming in, integrating, like Kizaridis. I think everyone wants to see him from the start, but at the moment he's probably been more impactful off the bench. So yeah, I do think he needs... I think it's the two different aspects of it. I do think he should be allowed grace to experiment and just find him to learn about the players to learn about him. So there's going to be teething problems early on, but also I don't think he can escape criticism for some of the team selections. Like last week, for example, was particularly noticeable. Today was it was 4-4-2. I think the only one that fans would have liked seeing Braga. I think fans would have preferred to see Kizaridis on the left rather than Forrest. Kabori, we've talked about it with Tom, we've talked about it between ourselves. Still think he looks like he's going to be a better striker or a centre forward than he is a right winger. I don't think that's his position.
Yeah, so the big issue for Hearts seemed to be that, the most worrying issue for me anyway, and it happened a few times in the first half, and then Motherwell actually scored 2 goals from this in the second half, but they just beat Hearts' press far too easily. A couple of passes, and they had runners running at the Hearts' defence and then running towards their own goal and things like that. And then the substitutes, I mean, these 2 goals happened after the half-time substitutes were made, but eventually the half-time substitutes did make an impact. Benny was getting the ball in positions that Cammy Devlin was in the first half, but he was turning and facing the opposition goal and playing a more progressive pass. Claudio Braga will come and give him his own little section, I guess. Another one that came on later in the game that Derek McInnes made sure to give a shout to was Blair Spittle, who sets up the second goal.
Yeah, the first Braga goal.
The first Braga goal. So much to remember.
Yeah, I know. This is one of those where we'll come back and discuss again the game once one of us watches it back, and we'll talk about it on Monday and a wee bit more in depth and hopefully tactical wise. But I was like, I just need to go home and have a sleep. It just heads all over the place after watching that. So apologies if we are rambling or go down different tangents. But yeah, so the 2 different aspects to that is when we talked about team selection. 4-4-2 was great. I think where it went wrong was maybe not so much the personnel, was the system itself, going to the middle against Motherwell, who just bounced the ball about with ease, and they tried to disrupt them high up the park because, and again, I think, was it yourself or Scott mentioned it on Friday, whereas if you set off Motherwell, if you set off Motherwell and let them play in front of you, then if they find it more difficult, but you can't do that at Tynecastle. Yeah. There's an onus on you to go and attack, and I think the idea was to really disrupt them high up the park, but the coaching, the cohesion, the structure of Motherwell was excellent. I thought Elliot Watt was unbelievable. It's like you're just like, is this Andrea Pirlo sitting in the middle? And then it was just not just him. I thought Fadinger was got about really well and kind of supported him in as a both a 6 and an 8 there, and then you had Elijah Just, who seemed to be in a free role, finding space so well, took the ball in really well, glided with it really well. Slattery's really effective. So then they had a punch when they went forward, and they had a real composure in possession. I would be showing some of their midfield clips to other Hearts midfielders. It's like, this is what you're meant to do, this is what you should be doing, get the ball in, pop it forward and move forward quickly. And then you have the second half where it took them a while to get to grips, but yeah, you've seen it with just the momentum swung where Motherwell got a wee bit nervous. That just happens in football, and you got a bit more balance in midfield with Spittle beginning me. And that's the thing where if you're playing a 3-5-2, I know he's probably someone who's come under fire quite a bit this season so far, Spittle, but you need someone like Spittle in the midfield. If it's not him, then you're potentially looking at having to bring someone in that mould of being able to play those forward passes and being able to add a creative spark when you're playing a midfield three.
So the first hour was, it felt like, I don't know, it felt like every time Hearts pressed Motherwell they were able to find a spare man, and then it felt like every time...
Like I said, Motherwell wanted Hearts to press them.
And then it felt like every time Hearts had the ball they had no space, there was no sustained pressure in that first half, there was very few passages of play from Hearts. Then the second half starts like that again, and as we've kind of mentioned, Braga is kind of the saviour in the end. Milne's strike, I mean, we'll just give that a wee mention to begin with. What a beauty of a strike, and he just hit it so nonchalantly as well. That gets Hearts back into the game, but then Braga, I thought he took that first goal really well, because you can tell he was wanting to go back on. He's guilty sometimes of going back onto his right foot too often. That time he sort of looked like, I don't know if he was feigning to or whether he wanted to, but he was forced onto his left. I mean, a wee bit of fortune that goes through the goalkeeper's left, but it's a great finish.
It's a brilliant finish, really confident, like a really confident finish. And I also think the moment of it being flagged offside, so you've had that initial elation and then it's taken away from you, like VAR's worked in a positive here for Hearts, and then you're kind of waiting, and it's that moment where the goal gets awarded, so it gives Hearts a big lift, and Motherwell damn, it's gone from 3-1, we've kind of had a scare, to now it's 3-2 and everything's up. But Braga's the type of player that Hearts fans want to see. Why he wasn't in the starting 11 is because McInnes talked about both Shankland and him coming to the ball, whereas he wants Braga to run in behind, so there is that, and that's, you wrote about it in the instant analysis, it's what McInnes said before the match. He wanted Wilson to stretch the game, and then it gives Shankland that pocket space. There is there could be a discussion in time with the strikers that Hearts have got and the way that Shankland's been playing the last couple. Again, it's very, very small sample size, but the impact Shankland's had over the last couple of days is that couple of games is that he's not really had a strong impact. So you're looking at the moment in terms of the strikers, Braga should be the first player on the team sheet in terms of the forwards, and then it's fitting around him because he has the ability to be a talismanic figure, and he provides the crowd with a bit of energy, and he has just the way he carries himself, the way he plays the game is how probably Hearts fans want to see their forwards getting about. And he just asks so many questions of defences. And you look at it, what Hearts wanted to do from the start and disrupt Motherwell. I just think Braga would have been perfect for that.
That's what I said the other day, but
when we were talking, exactly.
I thought just because Hearts were likely to press Motherwell that Braga would be the guy that starts. I did have in my head where I was going to go next, but because of that wee detour, I don't know where I was. So where do Hearts go from here, do you think? Obviously it's on to Livingston next week, but do you think that comeback papers over a lot of cracks in a way? There's a lot of work that McInnes has to go away and do and thinking and that kind of stuff. Do you think that there was enough positivity from that comeback for Hearts to take a bit of momentum rather than be too bogged down by the way they started that match?
I think there's still a lot of questions at the moment, but questions that should be naturally answered in the coming weeks and you've got the game against Livingston, and then this transfer window shuts and it settles down. There's only 2 games in September, so there is that. If you can go into that with like 10 points, if you manage to win at Livingston, and then it's more time on the training ground, you've got to now, like, you know who you're working with in terms of squad wise, potential new additions. So there are a lot of answers still to be, a lot of questions, still to be answered. The big positive is the mentality of the team, and the fact that come back to already from losing positions, had 3 points last week in the cup, went from 1-0 to 1-1. But you can flip the other side and say, stop going behind. So you need to get in front. And McInnes mentioned that, it's like you need to score in the first goal at Tynecastle is massive. So yes, I think it's been, I wouldn't say a reality check, but the last couple of weeks have maybe just shown that what the reality is that this is still a work in progress, and there's still going to be bumps in the road to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, McInnes was trying to warn Hearts fans about that recently. He was using words like a belt in the mouth and things like that.
Yeah.
A belt in the mouth is round the corner.
Which I think we just said that the corner came a lot quicker.
We just had that belt in the mouth. We will leave it there. There's much more that we could talk about, and as Joel says, we will be back soon to dissect that a bit more once we've kind of analysed it a bit more. Please check everything out at heartstandard.co.uk. I'll link a couple of the articles from that game in the description. Please subscribe if you can. Go get our app if you can. We're running a subscription offer at the moment. You can get your first 6 months for £1, or you can get a whole year for £12. I think I get that right. Always hesitate on that bit. And we'll see you all soon.